What's going on, people? It's Hajimoto with another Umarex Gauntlet modification video. In this tutorial, we're going to be changing the poppet valve, or the poppet that's in the valve. We're going to be changing the hammer spring, the trigger spring, and we're going to be introducing an adjuster so that you can adjust the power of your gauntlet just like most of the better rifles do. Give you an ability to adjust it. First and foremost, before we get going, guys, there are the safety rules that you must follow, which is make sure that the gun has no magazine in it, make sure that there is no pellet in it, make sure it's unloaded, shoot it one time before you start working on it, and then we're going to be going through the installation. I'll be referring to the owner's manual that has a couple of things that we need to talk about, and I'll also be referring to the schematic, which has all of the parts that's broken out as I walk through to help you understand and to see in detail per the schematic how things go together and as I'm going through it. So with that being said, this is my gauntlet, and what I'm going to be doing is popping off the scope. We'll be taking the forward shroud off of it. We'll be taking the action out of the stock. And then we're going to be modifying the stock so that we can adjust this without taking the action out. Please understand that in this video, because this is my gauntlet, there's some modifications to it that yours may not have. Everything may not align exactly. So keep that in mind. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. We got a lot of ground to cover here, about 25 minutes plus worth of ground to cover. So let's go ahead and get going. Boom! Look at that, scope just disappeared, came right off like magic. Next thing we want to do is we're going to actually check to make sure that it is not cocked. I'm making sure the hammer is not cocked. It is loose and forward, and it doesn't have anything in it. I'm making sure that the hammer's not loaded. And then what we're going to do is start taking the degas tool that they give us, and we're going to go ahead and degas the rifle. Once all of the air is out of it, we're then going to take the stock, the swivel stud screw off, which you can use the degas tool for. It slips through so that you can just turn it off. And this is where I'm going to pause it for a second because I want to refer to the schematic because I want to show you what we're doing here. I'm just going to go through it before we actually start. So in this video, what I'm going to do, and as you're going to see me go through step by step, is we degas the rifle just now. We're going to then take out the stock screw, which comes through the bottom of the stock and holds into the action. That's going to be on page 2 of the schematic here. So this screw comes up through the stock and holds the action down inside of it. We'll be then taking out the left and right screws here so that the shroud can come off. And then most of everything that we're going to do from that point forward is going to be here on this assembly. At any point you can freeze this video so that you can familiarize yourself with this layout in case you get confused at any point. And it's just important that I bring that up because the video can always be paused. So here we go, taking out the stock screw, the big long one that's just forward of the trigger. Now we'll take the left screw out of the forestock. Flip the rifle over and take out the right screw. Now you should be able to push the 2 tabs and then it should slide forward directly off. take the safety and aim it straight down the trigger tray, you can see how it will not come through the stock unless you have it pointing in that direction. That's the little rubber stop that goes at the end of the action into the stock. We'll get the stock out of the way. We're all set with that. We'll concentrate on the action here now. The trigger assembly, the forward screw, which is an Allen, we're going to take that out. The rear one is a Phillips screw, but it also screws up into the cap that's on the rear. That goes all the way up to the top cap. It's a very long screw. Once you get that out, hold that cap with your finger because it may pop out because of the spring for the hammer. Just in case. Once that's done, you can then take the end cap off. And at this point, you should be able to then take the bolt and push rearward to eject the spacer. Now those brass spacers are the spacers, like I said. Let me go back here for 1 second. Those brass spacers are the spacers from my mod, where I put a little more trigger load, preload on the hammer, which is not needed. These will probably not be in yours, obviously, but this spacer will be. And that spacer that's sticking out is the plastic spacer that's sitting right here. It'll be the end cap, this spacer, then the spring guide, spring, and then the hammer. That's the assembly. Once the trigger's out of the way, that's the way the assembly is, and that's the way it'll come apart. So again, you'll see things that not necessarily are in your rifle. Those preloads, by the way, were completely unnecessary. That is the stock spring and guide. Make sure the bolt is pulled all the way back, and we're trying to get to the one screw that's in the single shot tray, or where the magazine goes. That screw holds the action to the pressure tube. That tube right there in my finger is a little rubber tube that communicates the air from the tube to the bottom. It's known as the transfer port tube. Now the breech can be put up out of the way. We don't need that anymore. The hammer pin, very important about this hammer pin. That goes into the hammer that slides back and forth and also engages into the bolt in the top. So as you pull the bolt back, it will pull the hammer back. So it's going to be this pin right here. It sits into this hammer so that when the bolt draws back, see that little slot there? That little slot grabs that pin and pulls it back. But that little pin, number 21, is important because we're going to be using it for a couple of other functions, so make sure you keep it close by. There's the hammer. As you can see, mine is a bit shiny because I did polish it more than most. Now you want to take out the valve screw. On the bottom, flip it over, and you'll see one little black screw that just goes into the valve so that it can't slide forward or back when it's under pressure. Now with that's off, we can get the bottle out of our way. And at the block that's at the end, there's 4 screws that we're going to be taking out so that we can take that bottle block off. I'm going to speed this part up. Actually, hold on. I want to talk about this for a second. The reason I flex this is I want to show you something. Most of you guys that are out there know that I make a barrel band. And the barrel band goes from the bottle up to the barrel to the shroud and supports it. And some of you have been saying, well, the barrel band is pulling the barrel down, or the barrel band is pushing the barrel up. When you notice when I take these screws and loosen them, what I'm going to do is flex to show you that if you loosen these 4 screws, you can actually change the distance of your bottle to shroud by simply degassing the rifle, loosening these 4 screws, and then you'll see the amount of flex there is in this. Now with those screws just loose, watch when I flex this. You'll see it. between the tube and the block. See that? So that means the bottle can be flexed up and down. You can close the gap, get it to wherever you want at the end, and then just tighten the screws up. So keep that in mind. It's another little tip that can save you a bunch of time and aggravation. Okay, now when you pull this out, be careful. Work it really slowly. You don't want to just rip it out in case there's any burrs on those holes. You don't want to tear your O-ring, so you're really carefully just wiggling it out. And then once you get it out, check the O-rings just to make sure that they're not damaged. You're looking for any gouges, nicks, making sure that it's not cut in any way. You'll want to replace them if they are. Okay, now this is where I was telling you the spacer that behind the valve. That's going to be, let's go back over our schematic now so that we can see it. That's this spacer that's in the front. This goes over the valve poppet. The valve poppet will come through right here, and that's just the spacer that goes in front of it. So you know the screw that we took out from the bottom, and there was a screw down through this port. They both screw into this block, this little spacer here. And they call it a locating plug, number 19. It's called a locating plug. Kind of a weird name. Okay, now in the actual tube itself is the valve down inside. And the valve itself, we need to talk about the configuration of the valve a little bit. You're gonna need a big flat blade screwdriver, and you're gonna take the pin from the hammer and drop it into the transfer port hole. Okay. Once that's in there, I want to talk about the valve, what it looks like inside. When you look at the valve itself, there's a cage that's made out of aluminum, which has a slot in the bottom, which you should be able to drop a screwdriver down in the tube, and what you're trying to do is turn that so that it'll loosen. And the reason you're trying to do that is in this photo, this aluminum section tightens towards this brass section, trapping the O-ring in between. And as these two tighten, the O-ring swells so that it fits tight in the tube. So that's why you put the pin in the valve here, because as you go to turn this, it keeps the valve from spinning. It won't hurt anything. And then once you loosen that, the O-ring now is relaxed and it's going to come out a lot easier. So we'll take the cage and the spring out. The spring's right inside of it. That's the spring and the cage. We'll set that off to the side. Now we can take the hammer pin out, and we're at this point we can start pushing the valve towards the bottle end of the tube. And we're going to get really carefully and slow down here when we start getting by these holes, because we do not want to scalp our O-rings as we go past it. There's one little O-ring on that, and we don't want to damage it. Okay, now open up your kit, and in your kit you're going to have the new poppet, replacement poppet for it. There'll be the hammer spring, the new hammer spring, the adjuster end cap, and there's going to be a trigger spring that's going to be also included. And we'll cover the trigger spring at the end. So there's the stock one on the top, and the replacement one has the more coils. It's a lot lighter than the stock one. The stock one's very, very, very stiff. So we'll put that off to the side. This is the replacement poppet that's going to go into the valve, and it has to seat. Now, just so you know, when these two pieces have never been together before, the poppet needs to be burnished to the brass valve. And burnishing just means that they both get spun, like you're lapping the two so that they seal together when it's under pressure. So, well, at this point we're going to burnish the edge. You'll just need a cordless screw gun. You'll drop it in so that the O-ring is towards this end. The stem comes through, And you're going to take your cordless screw gun and you're going to just grab a hold of the poppet shaft, and we're going to pull on the brass once we tighten the chuck down. Don't want to super tighten it, but you want it tight so that it doesn't pull off. Okay, and I'll use a high speed, and I'm pulling the brass to get some pressure. And I'm burnishing the edge. Right now these poppet plastic is spinning against the brass so that they can burnish and get a nice tight seal so that it doesn't leak air when it's under pressure. That's all it takes. You don't want to do it till it melts. You're not doing it for minutes on end. 10 seconds maximum is about all that's needed. At this point, we'll take the spring and the cage and now put them over the poppet, and we thread them together, but we do not tighten it. You don't want to tighten it down because we don't want that O-ring to swell back out again and make it difficult for us to put in. When we insert the valve in, I'm going to zoom in because this is real important how you put this in so you don't damage that O-ring. You want your transfer port to be pointing up. So you'll notice that little square plate is the bottom. We want the top, so it's going to be the other side. Now we have our transfer port at the top. We're going to push the O-ring into the beginning, and we're making sure that we're wiggling and going in circles so that we're making sure it goes past that. Now as we start to go in, the screw holes, you'll see sometimes the O-ring will get caught. So using a rounded end pick tool, can't be sharp, you want it to be rounded end, like a blunt end, and you're just pushing the O-ring in so that it's not catching on the edge, and you push to the next hole. That's going to keep you from damaging your O-rings. And you'll do the same thing here. Push the O-ring in so that it's not getting caught on the edge, so that you can push it all the way in. And there we go. So now we're going to push the valve in place, and we're pushing it really, really slowly, and we're going to, the minute we see the valve show up in the hole, we're looking for that transfer port. Now in this, it turned just a little bit on us at the bottom, so I'll take my pick tool and I'll just line the transfer port up. At this point, we're going to be using that hammer pin again. It's nice and round and smooth. We drop it in so that it keeps that valve in the right spot. Checking the bottom to make sure it's lined up properly, and we keep the hammer pin in so it's lined up. At this point, we can take that flat bladed screwdriver, and what we're going to do is, looking down in the tube, we're going to then tighten the cage against the valve so that it expands the O-ring and tightens it inside the tube. And there you go, nice and tight. Pull the pin out, put that off to the side, we're going to need it. At this point we can start to, we're going to pause just to look and see what we've done here. I just want to look at the schematic one more time so that we understand what we just did. What we just did was reassemble the valve, and the valve is right here. There's the cage, there's the spring. The poppet was replaced. As we put it back together again, we replaced that poppet, and then everything got slid into the tube. We lined it up, we have it in place, and then we tightened the cage, which expanded the O-ring, and it's in place now. So now we're going to start putting everything back together again by putting in the transfer port tube, and we'll start reassembling it. So we take our transfer tube, it's just nothing more than rubber or plastic, and we're making sure that it's not hung up on the pressure tube. It has to sit down on top of the valve, sit down inside. And what I'm doing, you can't see, is off to the left. I have silicone over here, a little tub of it, and it's open, and I just take my finger every now and then and I put a little on it, and I'm rubbing the tops of gaskets and seals and so forth. The next thing is that spacer that goes in, that'll go against the valve. If you notice, there's a thicker end and a narrower end. So the hole that points up, that's going to go through the top here, that hole should be closest to the left when we're shooting it in the tube. So remember, that hole's not centered, it's off to one side. So when we're putting it in, you want to make sure you do that orientation. wider on one side, the wider goes towards the back of the rifle. Now that slides down, it'll sit against the poppet. We'll go ahead and line up that hole. Now that's going to be where the breech screw comes down through the top. Right under our breech bolt. Then you'll take your assembly here, which is your new spring, the old hammer, and the old guide. And if we look at the schematic here, you'll see that this is the assembly. It'll be the hammer with the spring in it, the guide in that. So that as an assembly is what I'm getting ready to put in now. You want that hole for the hammer pin to be lined up with that slot. Now your pin should be able to drop right in and keep it from twisting. This is the adjuster block. You'll notice that the adjuster hole will be on the bolt side. You'll want that on the side of where the bolt's going to pull back to cock the rifle. So it should be, if you're looking at it from where I'm looking at, it'll be on the top. If you're looking at it from the back, it'll be on the right-hand side. Putting a little silicone lube on everything so that it kind of slides around, checking to make sure that the hammer's free floating, not binding up, not pressing against that valve, it's free floating. And we're going to introduce the breech back to the pressure tube. And we're lining that pin with the bolt, and you'll keep the bolt forward. You don't want it back. It's forward because the hammer's forward, so you want them both forward. Then carefully you're going to take the two and line the transfer port up with the port on the breech, and you're going to put the pin in the bolt slot. And then once they line up, very carefully make sure the transfer port's not being pinched, the transfer tube isn't being pinched, and then push the assembly together, hold it together, and check the bottom just to make sure that that hammer is forward. Now the cap in the back, line the hole up and get your trigger ready with the long screw still in it, the rear screw towards the end, and we're going to go ahead and get that tightened down. Make sure the sear lines up with the hole, hold it up tight, and then go ahead and snug up that screw in the back. At this point, it's all set, so we'll pull the bolt back and we'll put it in the rear locked position. So now that hammer's being forced backwards. That gives us access to the transfer, not the transfer, but right where the breech block is held down against the pressure tube through the magazine hole. Put that one in. It'll be a tapered bolt. I'm going to go through that again. We're just going to make sure that we understand which fastener we're talking about. Tapered head with 2 lock washers on it. That goes down through here and screws into that locator spacer that they had inside. It screws into that, and that holds these 2 assemblies together. Tightening up the rear screw now, nice and tight. And this screw that was in here, those 2 are now tight. These 2 are now aligned, and the fasteners that hold the 2 together are nice and tight. The forward trigger screw now is the Allen screw. Start it with your fingers, and once that's started, go ahead and tighten it up with the Allen wrench. Okay, the next one's going to be the valve screw, which was the little black screw that goes in the bottom to tighten up the valve. Hold on, something doesn't seem right here. Did I skip that? It looks like there it is. It went really fast. I didn't even notice it went by. So when we do the top screw, we end up then flipping over and we do the bottom screw. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss that, guys. That's the valve screw at the bottom. I missed that the first time. I didn't see it happen. Looked away for a second. Now that the valve screw is in the bottom, we're going to do the front, which is the block. Go ahead and put some silicone on those O-rings. Make sure that they're good and clean. Put some inside the tube itself and check to make sure that those holes, screw holes, have no burrs on them. And then real carefully start inserting the block. Very carefully making sure that as you're going in, change your rotation, move it left, right. You're really carefully, you're not shoving this in. Very carefully working it in. And now the screw holes line up. And this is the part where I accelerated, because it takes a while to line the screws up and put them in. So I power through this because it's pretty easy. You took it apart, so it's easy enough to get back together again. Okay, at this point, we're going to go ahead and test the bolt and the trigger. And you don't want to have the hammer slam into the valve unnecessarily, so you hold the bolt and then you can decock the rifle. Cock it again, and then you're holding it so you can decock it. Just making sure everything's working right, which it is. Now take it and decock it and go from there. Here's the portion where you've got a decision to make. You do not have to drill a hole in your stock. On mine, I did, and the reason that I did that was so that we can gain access to the adjuster without taking the action out of the stock. And this is one hole that'd be drilled back here so that we can take an Allen wrench and just reach through and make an adjustment. If you don't want to make that hole through your stock, you can skip this portion, and then when you get to the portion where when I show it adjusting, you simply have to do that every time if you want to change things. So we're going to get the stock ready so that we can make that hole. Take out the rear swivel, take it out completely. Then take out the two screws that are in the butt stock. There's an upper and a lower. We'll get those out. Once those two screws come off, we'll then gain access to the inner plate. There's two screws at the top here. See those two screws right at the top? Take those two out. That's what holds the cheek piece assembly into the stock. The block that feeds it up and down, you gotta take those two fasteners out. And the reason we're taking that out is so that the entire cheek piece gets out of our way, so the drill motor has a place to sit in, because we're trying to drill in a perpendicular line with the stock. We want to be in line with it, and if this is in the way, it puts the drill at like a 45-degree angle. We don't want that. Now that that's out, we'll go ahead and crank the cheek piece as high as we can so that the whole assembly will then just come out of the stock. Now the whole unit can then set off to the side. At this point, we're going to talk about what it's going to take to measure and drill for the adjustment hole. The end of the stock has a seam in the plastic that runs down it. From that seam, and you see this shoulder that runs around this ridged line, where we're going to drill the hole is right where that red dot is. So the hole is going to be in the center of that ridge. Okay? So from the center line of the seam of the plastic to the bolt side, 1/4 of an inch. And then you're just going to make a mark with either a pointy screwdriver, a punch, and awl. And you want it to be in the crease of the shoulder that's in the stock. So it's important that I'm going to go over this a couple times just to make sure, because you don't want to drill multiple holes in the back. You want it to be nice and clean and look professional. So from the seam towards the bolt side, 1/4 of an inch, make a mark so that you know where you're going to drill. And then we're going to take a drill bit and we're going to drill a hole so that we're parallel with the stock, forward to back, running a straight hole in. Okay, I want to be in the center of that crease. Once the bit starts, I lay the drill down so I'm perpendicular with the stock, running straight forward and back. Now we've got a straight hole through the stock. That's our adjustment hole screw. We will not have to take the action out to adjust our rifle anymore. Simply push your Allen key through there, lines up with the adjuster, and you can increase the power or decrease the power of your Gauntlet on the fly. And where that comes into handy is different weight pellets. That's the key. Heavier pellets, you want to crank it up. Lower weight pellets, you can back it down. So now we're going to reverse the process by putting the cheek piece in, and then we're going to crank it all the way down so that it's as low as it can be. The only way that the block screws inside there will line up is by doing this. I'm going to go ahead and speed this up so that we can get the rest of that, the plate in, then the butt pad, all goes back in again. At this point, we can start to put the action in for full power. So understand that if you didn't drill the hole in the stock, this is what you would have to do to make adjustments. So I've adjusted the screw all the way in so we have maximum power adjustment, and then you'd put it in the stock and you could test it and fire it and see how it is. If you needed to lighten it up, you would have to take it out, turn that in the opposite direction, counterclockwise, and that would give you less power. With the hole, though, like I keep saying, you can just do it without have to do that. Safety needs to be pointing down, as we always say, because it won't fit through the stock if you don't. So with that pointing down, we'll reintroduce the action into the stock. Start whipping this system back together again. Put the stock bolt in, put the tank back on. Go ahead and tighten up that, we'll put the shroud on the front, snap everything together, make sure everything's aligned. Tighten up the left screw, tighten up the right, now the bottom, now the swivel stud. Everything's back together again. We'll go ahead and give it a couple of test cocking and using the trigger. Now the little rubber piece that your owner's manual refers to the rubber piece, and I'm going to show you that because there's a lot of folks that when they took the action out, they don't even realize, you know, that the little guy fell out, and they'll say, "What the heck was that little black rubber piece?" When I was done, I had found this extra piece, and it's kind of funny. It's this little rubber guy right here. In the end, where the action fits down inside, this little rubber guy tucks in so that it fills in the void where the breech and the stock are together. And when I was talking about drilling that hole, guys, that's that edge, that's that shelf we were talking about, and we want our hole to be in the center of where these intersect, the low point and the high point, but over there on the other side. So that gets that. Next thing, what we're going to do is, we don't have video footage on this, but it's going to be a quick and easy explanation, and it has to do with the supplied trigger spring that's going to come with the unit. You take this fastener, take this screw, you take it all the way out. Now I know in my mod I showed you guys how to take that screw out and put a ballpoint pen spring in so that the trigger was lighter for the first stage. The included spring is to help accomplish that, and it works better with the mod for the adjustment. Simply take this screw out, pull the screw out, pull the spring out, put in the replacement spring, and put the screw back in it again, and the installation will be complete. That'll be all the parts. Now we just run through a couple of test runs here on the bolt. I decocked the rifle. It's working fine. And I'll take you through that little rubber, installing that little rubber guy at the end. That's the configuration, the way it goes in. Tucks down in between the breech and the stock. Tucked in nice and flush. and that's all she wrote. So that's the completed installation on it. But what I wanted to do is to have a second to let you guys know that I will be following up with a performance adjustment video where I actually take the rifle and adjust it to show how you use that adjuster to get the most performance out of your Gauntlet. But for now, that's the full installation of the kit. You should be all set. Gas your rifle up and start using your new modified and preload adjustment Gauntlet. I want to thank you guys for watching my videos. Please be sure to look in the description of the video below, on the left or below, that has all the details of what we're talking about, where you can get the kit, and who do you need to contact if you got any questions. I really appreciate you guys' support, and I hope this video has given you some knowledge in getting your Gauntlet to be a super Gauntlet. You guys take it easy, and thanks again.